The rain hammered Manhattan's Upper West Side as Aria Hartwell stepped out of Columbia's Butler Library at 2 a.m. At 26, she was running on fumes, final year of law school, top of her class, juggling constitutional law and criminal procedure while secretly investigating the Constantine crime family for the FBI. Her worn leather messenger bag was heavy with case files and the encrypted and phone. Agent Harrison Blake had given her 8 months ago. She'd been so proud when he recruited her, appealing to her sense of justice, her desire to make a difference beyond the courtroom. Her father, Judge Marcus Hartwell, had always taught her that the law was sacred, that justice was the bedrock of civilization. She pulled her coat tighter against the rain, reviewing the day's discoveries in her mind. She'd finally cracked the pattern in Constantine's shipping manifests, traced payments through 3 shell corporations, identified key players in his organization. One more piece, and Blake said they could move, could bring down the entire operation. She never saw them coming. Aria Hartwell. The voice came from behind her. Silk and ice, cultured and dangerous. We need to talk. She spun, hand diving for the pepper spray in her pocket. Damien Constantin stood 3 feet away, somehow both casual and threatening, in an expensive charcoal suit that hadn't been touched by the rain. At 37, he was devastatingly beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. All sharp cheekbones, pale blue eyes like winter sky, dark hair slicked back from a face that belonged on a Renaissance painting of a fallen angel. Behind him, blocking her escape route, stood Viktor Petrov, 6'4" of solid muscle, scarred face impassive, hands relaxed at his sides in the way of men who didn't need to telegraph violence. You're making a mistake, Arya said, finger on the pepper spray trigger. The only mistake, Damien said softly, was thinking you could investigate my organization without me noticing. Victor? The big Russian moved with surprising speed, his massive hand covering hers before she could deploy the spray. Please don't make this difficult, miss. We just want to talk. Another man appeared from the shadows. Younger, maybe late 20s, with Damien's features but wilder, more reckless. He had zip ties ready. Is this necessary? Arya demanded as they secured her wrists, her mind racing through self-defense moves that suddenly seemed useless against 3 trained killers. I'm afraid so, Damien said, and there was something almost apologetic in his tone. You've been asking very interesting questions at the docks. Paid off one of Volkov's men for shipping manifests. That kind of curiosity can be dangerous. As they guided her toward a black sedan idling at the curb, Arya's eyes swept the street, looking for witnesses, for help, for anything. That's when she saw him, a figure standing across Amsterdam Avenue under an awning, barely visible in the rain and shadows. But she recognized the stance, the build. Harrison Blake, her FBI handler, watching. Not intervening. Just watching. The realization hit her like ice water. He wasn't coming to help. He wasn't calling for backup. He was just standing there with what might have been a camera, documenting her abduction like it was part of some plan she didn't understand. Then Victor's hand, surprisingly gentle, guided her head down as they put her in the car, and Blake disappeared from view. Chapter 2. The Tribeca penthouse was nothing like she'd expected from a crime lord's lair. Arya had imagined dark basements, torture implements, the crude trappings of organized violence. Instead, she found herself in a space that could have graced Architectural Digest: soaring ceilings, exposed brick and steel beams, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the Hudson River and the glittering financial district beyond. Modern art on the walls, leather furniture that probably cost more than her annual tuition, and everywhere, an understated elegance that spoke of old money and refined taste. They'd removed her zip ties once inside, though Victor remained stationed by the door like a guardian statue. Damien had shed his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and now stood by those massive windows, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the city lights. Around a glass conference table sat his inner circle. Victor, at the door. Natasha Volkov, no relation to the Russian mobster she'd later learn. A striking woman in her 50s with platinum hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She wore a gray suit that screamed expensive lawyer, and indeed, that's what she'd once been. And Alexei Konstantin, Damien's half-brother, 29 and radiating restless energy, drumming his fingers on the table's edge. Arya sat in the middle, wrists free but surrounded, her law school training kicking in. Assess the room, identify exits, calculate odds, establish baseline behavior. Don't show fear. This is kidnapping, she said, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. Federal offense. You're looking at 20 years minimum. Alexei laughed. She's got balls. I like her. Alexei, shut up, Natasha said without looking at him. Damien finally turned from the window, and the full force of his attention was like being caught in a spotlight. Those pale blue eyes studied her with an intensity that was almost physical, cataloging every micro-expression, every tell, every secret she thought she'd hidden. Tell me about Agent Harrison Blake, he said, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. Arya's heart stuttered, barely, but Natasha caught it. So did Damien, though his expression didn't change. I don't know who that is, Arya said. You met him 7 times in the past 2 months. Damien moved toward her, each step deliberate, predatory. Twice at the Starbucks on Broadway and 114th. Once in Madison Square Park, where you sat on a bench for 40 minutes pretending to read while he briefed you. 3 times at hotels, the Carlyle, the Pierre, and most recently 5 hours at the Mandarin Oriental, room 2847. He was close now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something with bergamot and cedarwood, expensive and understated. He pulled up a chair and sat directly across from her, near enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the small scar above his left eyebrow. You ordered room service, he continued. Champagne. Oysters. Very romantic for a handler-asset relationship. Or was it something else? Miss Hartwell? The insinuation hung in the air, ugly and calculated. Arya felt anger override fear. You're disgusting. I'm thorough. There's a difference. He pulled out a tablet, swiped through images. Now let me show you something interesting. The first photo made her stomach drop. Harrison Blake shaking hands with a heavyset man in an expensive suit, Sergei Volkov, the Russian mobster who'd been feuding with Konstantin's organization for years. The photo was dated 3 months ago. Damien swiped again. Blake entering a warehouse in Queens, surrounded by armed men with distinctive Bratva tattoos. Blake at what looked like a military installation. Blake meeting with Volkov again, this time exchanging manila envelopes. Then the financial records. Bank transfers showing payments from shell companies owned by Volkov's organization to an account in Blake's name. Hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 4 years. Blake isn't FBI investigating crime, Damien said quietly. He's CIA gone rogue, playing both sides. He's been using his federal credentials to maintain legitimacy while working for Volkov. Every piece of intelligence you've gathered, every contact you've made, every operation you've planned, Volkov has known about it all. He swiped to text messages, time-stamped from that morning. Blake, the Hartwell girl is getting too close. She's seen the shipping manifests. Then eliminate her. Make it clean, an accident. Already in motion. Mugging gone wrong. Tomorrow night. The room tilted. Arya gripped the edge of the table, her legal mind trying to find the holes in the evidence, the inconsistencies, the fabrications. But everything was documented, cross-referenced, time-stamped. The metadata was visible. The bank records bore official letterheads. Why should I believe you? She whispered, though she was already beginning to. Because 3 hours ago, I intercepted the man Blake sent to kill you. He's 1 floor below us right now, and he'll confirm everything I've just told you. How much he was paid, what methods he was instructed to use, what to do with your body afterward. Damien's voice was gentle now, almost kind. You're under my protection now, whether you want it or not. But there's more you need to know. He pulled up a new set of documents, and Arya felt the last of her world crumble. Financial records, property deeds, wire transfers, all bearing Judge Marcus Hartwell's signature. Her father's signature. Your father has been laundering money for Volkov's organization for 6 years, Damien said, and she could hear genuine sympathy in his voice now. Approximately $40 million has passed through accounts he controls. Real estate in Brighton Beach. Offshore companies in the Caymans. Blake recruited you specifically as leverage against him. Insurance in case your father ever tried to break free or became inconvenient. No. Arya shook her head, but the evidence was there, undeniable. Her father's signature, his accounts, properties she vaguely remembered him mentioning, investments she'd thought were legitimate. I'm sorry, Damien said, and he sounded like he meant it. You were never meant to bring down my organization. You were bait, leverage, and eventually, when you'd served your purpose, a loose end to be eliminated. Natasha moved beside her, setting down a glass of water Arya didn't remember her getting. I know this is overwhelming, dear. I've been where you are. Somehow I doubt that. 23 years ago, I was a federal prosecutor, youngest in the state, top of my class at NYU Law, believed in justice absolutely. Natasha's voice was steady, but Arya could hear old pain underneath. I prosecuted a case against a corrupt NYPD captain, had evidence, witnesses, everything airtight. He walked anyway, jury tampering, we later learned. My star witness was found dead 2 weeks later, ruled a suicide despite 2 gunshot wounds to the back of the head. And my son. She paused, and for the first time, her composure cracked. My son was 16, honor student, never been in trouble. 3 weeks after the trial, he was killed in a drive-by shooting. The shooters were the captain's crew. They were never charged. Case closed as gang violence. Her eyes refocused on Arya, hard as diamonds. That's when I learned the truth. The system you believe in, it's beautiful in theory. Constitutional rights, due process, equal justice under law. But in practice, it's a meat grinder that devours the innocent and protects the powerful. Damien doesn't pretend otherwise. He simply operates in the world as it actually is. So, you justify working for a criminal. I justify surviving, Natasha said simply, and helping others survive. Do you know what Damien's organization does in the neighborhoods we control? We fund after-school programs. We pay for funerals when families can't afford them. We keep the real predators, the ones who prey on children and the vulnerable, out of our territory. When the police won't come because the zip code isn't profitable enough, we come. We're not heroes, Miss Hartwell, but we're not the villains Blake painted us as either. Damien stood, giving her space. You have a choice to make. Walk out that door right now. I won't stop you. Go back to your life, your studies, pretend you never learned any of this. But within 48 hours, Blake will tie up his loose end and you'll be dead. Or, he met her eyes, you stay. You work with us to expose Blake Volkov and yes, your father. We bring down everyone who's lied to you, who's used you, who's turned justice into a weapon against the innocent. If I stay, Arya said slowly, we expose everyone, including whatever crimes your organization has committed. Alexei laughed sharply. She's got titanium ovaries. Out, Damien said to his brother. But now. When Alexei was gone, Damien's expression softened slightly. I admire your idealism. I even respect it. But let's be clear about parameters. We focus on the people actively trying to kill you. Blake and Volkov are the immediate threat. As for my organization, I won't lie about what we do. We operate outside the law, but we don't traffic in human beings. We don't poison communities with drugs. We don't prey on the vulnerable. There are lines I don't cross, not out of morality necessarily, but because certain types of evil are bad for business and bad for the soul. He extended his hand. Temporary alliance against common enemies. When it's over, we'll address the rest. Do we have an agreement? Arya looked at his outstretched hand. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd believed in, had been turned inside out. Her father was corrupt. Her FBI handler was a traitor. The man she'd been investigating as a criminal was offering her truth and protection. She took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, surprisingly gentle. We have an agreement, she said. But Damien, if you've lied to me about any of this, I will spend the rest of my life destroying you. Every legal tool, every connection, every ounce of intelligence I have. You'll never know peace. For the first time since she'd met him, Damien Constantin smiled. A real smile that transformed his cold features into something almost human. Miss Hartwell, he said, I would expect nothing less. Chapter 3. The guest suite was on the floor below the penthouse, and it was nicer than any place Arya had ever lived. Hardwood floors, a king-sized bed with linens that felt like clouds, a bathroom with a rainfall shower and a tub deep enough to swim in. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Hudson, where boats moved through the darkness like waterborne stars. And everywhere, small touches that suggested someone had actually thought about her comfort. Toiletries in brands she used. How did they know? Clothes in her exact size hanging in the closet. Books on the nightstand that matched her reading preferences. A laptop, fully charged, with secure internet access. It was thoughtful in a way that was almost disturbing. She just stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a plush robe with her dark hair loose and damp around her shoulders, when there was a knock at the door. "Come in." Damien entered carrying a tray, coffee that smelled like heaven, fresh pastries, fruit. He'd changed from his suit into dark slacks and a black cashmere sweater that made his pale eyes even more striking. His hair was slightly damp. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the tray on the table by the window. "You haven't eaten since." "Actually, I'm not sure when you last ate." "Yesterday afternoon." She sat across from him, acutely aware she was wearing nothing but a robe, that her defenses were down, that this man who'd kidnapped her hours ago was now serving her breakfast. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "The nice room, the clothes, the breakfast. You could have thrown me in a cell." "I could have, but that would make you my prisoner. I prefer reluctant ally." He poured coffee with the ease of long practice. "Besides, I find people are more cooperative when they're comfortable, more honest when they're not terrified." "I'm not terrified." "No, you're not," which continues to fascinate me. He leaned back, studying her openly. "Most people in your situation break down or start bargaining within the first hour. You've done neither. You demanded answers, negotiated terms, threatened me with legal destruction. You're either remarkably brave or you have a death wish. Or I'm too stubborn to give you the satisfaction." His lips curved slightly. "That too." He sipped his coffee, and for a moment they sat in surprisingly comfortable silence, watching dawn break over the city. "Tell me something. What made you want to become a lawyer?" "Why do you care?" "Because I'm trying to understand you. You're an anomaly. Top of your class at Columbia. Law review. You could go anywhere. Corporate law, Wall Street, make a fortune. Instead, you're heading toward public interest work. Criminal justice reform. The hard road, the low pay, the thankless work. Why?" Arya considered deflecting, but something about the quiet intimacy of the moment made her honest. "When I was 12, my best friend's brother was arrested for a robbery he didn't commit. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong skin color. The cops needed someone to close the case. They coerced a confession out of him. He was 17, scared, and they promised him it would be easier if he just confessed. He served 8 years before DNA evidence exonerated him." She met Damien's eyes. He came out broken. PTSD, trust issues, couldn't hold a job. 3 years after his release, he killed himself. And I thought, the system did that. The system that's supposed to protect people destroyed him. I wanted to fix it. "And now you've learned the system is more broken than you imagined." "Yes. That must be devastating." "It is." She set down her cup. "But it doesn't change the core truth. People need protection. They need justice. If the system won't provide it, something else has to." "Careful," Damien said softly. "That kind of thinking is how people like me get started. One small compromise leads to another, and before you know it, you're the villain in someone else's origin story. Is that what happened to you?" His expression closed slightly, walls going up. But after a moment, he seemed to make a decision. "My father was Sergei Konstantin. Came to America from Moscow in 1985, part of the first wave of Russian organized crime. Built an empire through violence and fear." Damien's voice was flat, carefully emotionless. He believed emotion was weakness. Used to say, "A man who feels is a man who can be controlled." So he beat emotion out of me. Started when I was 8. By 15, I'd learned to bury everything so deep that no one could use it against me. That's horrible. That was survival. He met her eyes. "When I was 23, my father decided Alexei had disrespected him. Some trivial thing I don't even remember. But he was drunk and angry, and he decided Alexei needed a permanent lesson. I found him in the basement, beating my 15-year-old brother with a pipe. Alexei was unconscious, bleeding. My father was going to kill him." "What did you do?" "I put 3 bullets in his chest. Center mass. He was dead before he hit the ground." Damien's hand trembled slightly around his coffee cup. The organization had a choice: accept me as the new leader or descend into civil war. They chose me. I was 23 years old and suddenly running a criminal empire. Do you regret it? Killing my father? No. He was a monster who deserved to die. But what I became afterward, he trailed off. I spent the next 5 years proving I was more ruthless than he ever was. More strategic, more dangerous. And it worked. I consolidated power, eliminated rivals, expanded our operations. By 30, I controlled more territory than any single person since Lucky Luciano. He finished his coffee, set the cup down with a sharp click. But somewhere in the middle of all that, I realized I'd become exactly what he wanted. A machine. A calculator of violence and profit. I'd buried my humanity so deep I couldn't find it anymore. His eyes found hers. Until 3 years ago, when I met someone, a woman who worked in one of my restaurants. She didn't know what I really was. She talked about changing the world, about making things better, and she actually believed it was possible. For a few months, being around her, I almost believed it too. What happened to her? Volkov killed her. The ice in his voice could have frozen the Hudson. Found out she was close to me, decided she could be leverage, kidnapped her, sent me photos, demanded I give up territory. I refused. I don't negotiate with terrorists. Thought I could find her in time. He paused. I was wrong. They sent her back to me in pieces. God, Damien, I'm so... Don't. He held up a hand. Don't apologize. Don't pity me. I made a choice and she paid the price. That's on me. But it taught me something. I can still feel, can still lose. I'm not as dead inside as I thought. And I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse. The silence between them was heavy with shared understanding. Arya found herself standing, moving toward him without conscious thought. She sat on the arm of his chair. For what it's worth, she said softly, I think it's a blessing. The world has enough emotionless monsters. It needs people who feel things, even when it hurts. He looked up at her, and there was something raw in his expression, something vulnerable he was allowing her to see. You're dangerous, Arya Hartwell, he said, voice rough. More dangerous than any weapon, any rival, any threat I've ever faced. Because you make me hope. And hope is deadly in my world. I don't care, she whispered. His control snapped. He pulled her into his lap, his mouth claiming hers with desperate hunger. Arya gasped against his lips, and he swallowed the sound, one hand fisting in her damp hair, the other gripping her hip through the robe. Tell me to stop, he breathed against her mouth. Tell me you don't want this. No. She bit his lower lip, tasting heat and need. Don't stop. He stood in one fluid motion, lifting her like she weighed nothing, and carried her to the bed. What followed was more war than lovemaking, all teeth and desperate need and boundaries dissolving. He worshipped her body with his mouth, mapped every curve with his hands, and when he finally entered her, it was with an intensity that left them both shaking. Mine, he growled with each thrust. Not yours, she gasped, even as her body betrayed her words. He flipped her onto her stomach, drove into her harder, one hand fisting in her hair. Your body knows the truth, even if you won't admit it. When she shattered around him, screaming into the pillow, he gentled, just for a moment, pressing kisses to her spine, whispering praise in Russian she didn't understand but felt in her bones. After, tangled together in sheets that smelled of sex and expensive cologne, he said quietly, I lied earlier. I don't just feel things. I feel everything for you. It terrifies me. She kissed his jaw, tasting salt. Good. We'll be terrified together. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He reached for it, read the message, and his entire body went rigid. What? Arya asked. Blake moved up the timeline. His voice was pure ice now, the tender lover gone, replaced by the crime lord. Your father is being moved to a warehouse in Red Hook in 1 hour. It's a trap. They're using him as bait, hoping we'll come for him. Then we don't go. If we don't, they'll kill him, probably torture him first to see what he knows about you. Damien was already moving, dressing, transformation complete. Victor! The door opened immediately. The big Russian had probably been standing guard the whole time. I heard. I'm calling the team. Damien turned back to Arya, his expression torn between protectiveness and pragmatism. You should stay here. Let us handle this. He's my father, she said, already dressing. I'm coming. Arya, don't. She met his eyes. You don't get to make me helpless now. Not after everything. Either we're partners or we're not. For a long moment, he stared at her. Then, surprisingly, he smiled, sharp and dangerous and full of fierce pride. Partners, he agreed, but you stay close to me. Promise. I promise. As they prepared for war, neither of them noticed the message that had just been sent from Blake's phone to his superiors. Constantine took the bait, moving to intercept. Chapter 4. The Red Hook Warehouse District was a graveyard of industrial ambition. Rusted shipping containers, abandoned buildings with broken windows, and shadows that hid a multitude of sins. The old fish processing plant sat near the water, its corrugated metal walls streaked with decades of weather and neglect. Inside, tied to a chair in the center of the vast space, Judge Marcus Hartwell looked every one of his 62 years. His face was bruised, blood dried at the corner of his mouth, his expensive suit torn and dirty. But his eyes were alert, tracking movement, calculating odds even now. Behind him stood Harrison Blake, weapon pressed to the judge's temple, looking far less polished than usual. His tie was loose, his jaw stubbled, his eyes slightly manic. The careful federal agent facade was cracking. "He'll come," Blake said to Sergei Volkov, who stood nearby smoking a cigarette, surrounded by a dozen armed men. "Constantine's weakness has always been sentiment. He'll come for the girl's father." "And then we kill them both," Volkov said in his heavy accent. "Your plan, Blake, has taken too long. Too many complications. I grow impatient. Your patience will be rewarded. By tomorrow, Constantine's organization will be headless and will divide his territory. Everything I promised." Outside, Damien's team moved into position. Victor and 4 others approached from the south, the old loading docks. Natasha took an elevated position in an adjacent building, her rifle already assembled. And Damien, with Arya beside him and 2 others flanking, approached the main entrance. "Remember," Damien said quietly into his comm, "the judge gets out alive. Everything else is secondary." "Copy," Victor responded. "In position. I count 12 hostiles inside, plus Blake and Volkov. They're ready for us." "Of course they are. It's a trap." Damien glanced at Arya. "Last chance to stay in the car." She checked her weapon, the Glock 19 Victor had given her, with extra magazines. "Not a chance." His eyes held hers for a moment, and something passed between them. Understanding, trust, possibly goodbye. "Stay behind me. If it goes to hell, you run. Understood?" "Understood." They moved in silence, using the containers and equipment for cover. The rain had started again, turning everything slick and treacherous. Arya's heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands were steady. A week ago, she'd never fired a gun outside a range. Now she was preparing to storm a warehouse full of armed criminals. The world had gone completely insane. Victor's voice crackled through their earpieces. "Wait for my signal. On 3. 1, 2. Gunfire erupted from the south entrance, shouting in Russian, the crack of rifles. "They made us," Victor said calmly, even as bullets ricocheted around him. "Going loud. North team, move now." Damien kicked in a side door, and they poured through into chaos. The warehouse had become a battlefield, Volkov's men taking cover behind equipment, returning fire toward both entrances. In the center, Blake had dragged the judge to his feet, using him as a human shield. "Constantine?" Blake shouted over the gunfire. "I know you're here. Come out or he dies." "I don't negotiate with dead men." Damien called back, his voice eerily calm despite the bullets whizzing past. "Look around. You're outnumbered. Finished." "Really?" Damien smiled, cold as winter. "Victor, status?" "Already done, boss?" Suddenly, half of Volkov's men lowered their weapons, confusion spreading through their ranks. Their radios squawked with contradictory orders. Alexei's handiwork, jamming their communications, sending false commands. The carefully coordinated defense collapsed into chaos. Arya saw her opportunity. While everyone was focused on the main fight, she'd spotted a catwalk running along the east wall. If she could get up there, she'd have a clear shot at Blake from above. She slipped away from Damien's team, moving low and fast, up a rickety metal staircase, rust flaking under her hands. Along the catwalk, each step measured carefully. The metal groaned but held. Below, the battle raged. She could see her father now, see Blake's gun pressed to his temple, see the desperation in the agent's eyes. She reached position, 20 feet above and slightly behind Blake. She raised her weapon, lined up the shot, remembered everything Victor had taught her. Breathe. Steady. Squeeze. Don't pull. The Glock kicked in her hands. The shot wasn't perfect. It hit Blake's shoulder rather than center mass, but it was enough. He stumbled, the gun dropping from his suddenly nerveless fingers. Judge Hartwell didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, breaking free, scrambling toward cover. All hell broke loose. Volkov, realizing the trap had sprung the wrong way, pulled his own weapon. He aimed at the judge's retreating form, finger tightening on the trigger. Damien appeared like an avenging angel, firing twice. Both shots hit Volkov's center mass. The Russian mobster went down, surprise frozen on his face. Blake had recovered his weapon despite his wounded shoulder, blood streaming down his arm. His face was twisted with rage and pain as he spotted Arya on the catwalk. "You stupid bitch!" he screamed, raising his gun toward her. "You could have been great. Could have been part of something bigger." Arya aimed at him, finger on the trigger, but her hands were shaking now, adrenaline and fear finally catching up. "Drop it, Harrison," Damien called, his weapon trained on Blake. "It's over. It's never over." Blake's hand steadied, aimed at Arya. Natasha's rifle cracked from her overwatch position. Blake's gun hand exploded in a spray of blood and bone fragments. He dropped to his knees, screaming, the weapon clattering away. Damien was on him instantly, kicking the gun away, securing him with zip ties even as Blake howled in agony. "That was for Irina," Damien said quietly, "and for every other innocent person you've destroyed." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting rapidly closer. Victor's voice, "FBI inbound, real ones this time. ETA 2 minutes." The warehouse doors burst open. Federal agents in raid gear poured through, weapons raised, voices overlapping. "FBI! Everyone on the ground! Now!" Damien's people complied immediately, hands visible, weapons down. Arya scrambled down from the catwalk, hands raised as agents surrounded her. Leading the raid was a woman in her mid-40s, black hair shot with silver, wearing a bulletproof vest over a crisp suit. She surveyed the carnage with sharp eyes. "AUSA Catherine Morrison," she announced. "Mr. Constantin, we had an agreement. I hope you've delivered everything you promised." "Everything and more," Damien said calmly, despite being surrounded by federal agents. "Blake is here, along with detailed evidence of his crimes. Volkov's network documentation is in the office upstairs, computers, files, everything. And Judge Hartwell is willing to testify in exchange for witness protection." Morrison's gaze found the judge, who was being tended by paramedics. "Judge Hartwell, is this true?" Marcus Hartwell looked at his daughter, tears streaming down his bruised face. "Mija, I'm so sorry for everything. I was weak, and I let them." "Save it for your testimony," Arya said, her voice ice. "You made your choices. Now you face the consequences." Morrison nodded approvingly. "Take them all in. We'll sort this out downtown." As agents moved to collect evidence and secure prisoners, Blake spat blood, glaring at Damien with pure hatred. "This isn't over. I have partners. This network goes deeper than you know." "Had partners," Morrison corrected. "We arrested 23 people tonight based on the intelligence Mr. Constantin provided. Your network is finished, Agent Blake, and you're looking at the rest of your life in federal prison." Epilogue. 6 months later. Arya stood in a sleek conference room in Lower Manhattan, looking out at the city she'd almost died in. So much had changed. Blake had been sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. Volkov's organization had collapsed, its lieutenants either arrested or fled. Her father was somewhere in the Midwest under witness protection, alive but dead to her in all the ways that mattered. She'd passed the bar exam on the first try as expected, but she'd turned down offers from every prestigious firm that had courted her. "Ready?" The voice came from behind her. She turned to find Damien in the doorway, sharp in a charcoal suit, holding 2 cups of coffee. He looked different now, softer somehow, like a weight had been lifted. He'd been true to his word, transitioning his operations entirely legitimate. The remaining criminal enterprises had been shut down or transferred to others. He was clean now. Mostly. "Ready," she said, taking the coffee, "though I still think it's insane that I'm working for you." "With me," he corrected, moving closer. "Partners, remember?" She looked at the logo on the glass door, Constantin Legal Consulting, a firm that provided legal services to immigrants, expungement clinics for those with criminal records, and advocacy for criminal justice reform. "You keep me honest," Damien said, cupping her face with one hand. "I keep you safe, and together we do some actual good in this broken system." "Is that what we're calling it?" She smiled despite herself. "Among other things." He kissed her softly, then deeper, and she melted into him the way she always did now. 6 months, and the intensity between them hadn't diminished. If anything, it had grown stronger, more complex, layered with trust and shared trauma, and something that felt dangerously like love. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Arya pressed her forehead to his. I never thought this is where I'd end up, she whispered. Working with a former crime lord. In love with him. Building something that exists in all the gray spaces I used to think were just black and white. Regrets? His voice was careful. Vulnerable in a way only she ever got to hear. Not even one. She pulled back to look at him properly. You were right that first night. The world is more complicated than I wanted to believe. Justice isn't always served by the system. Sometimes it has to be fought for in other ways. Messy, imperfect ways. Your father's testimony helped put away 37 people, Damien reminded her. Corrupt officials, dirty cops, money launderers. That's justice, even if it came at a cost. I know, and she did. She'd made peace with it, mostly. Her father had made his choices, paid his price, and was living with the consequences. She'd visited him once in witness protection, a stilted, painful conversation where he'd apologized, and she'd listened without forgiving. Maybe someday, maybe never. Either was okay. Come on, Damien said, threading his fingers through hers. We have clients waiting, and Natasha will kill us both if we're late to the first appointment. They walked together through the office space. Still sparse, still being set up, but already feeling like something real and important. Victor was there, improbably serving as head of security, his massive frame somehow reassuring rather than threatening to the vulnerable populations they served. Natasha had her own office, her years of legal experience invaluable as they navigated the complex intersection of immigration law and criminal justice. Even Alexei had found his place, running their technology division, using his hacking skills for good now, helping clients navigate bureaucratic systems, recovering lost documents, building secure communications for activists and advocates. It was a strange family they'd built from the wreckage of their old lives. But it was theirs. Their first client of the day was a woman from El Salvador, here illegally, terrified, with a son who'd been picked up by ICE. Arya sat across from her, Damien beside her, and explained in careful, gentle Spanish what they could do to help, what the options were, what the realistic outcomes looked like. The woman cried with relief when they told her they'd take the case pro bono, that they'd fight for her son, that she wasn't alone anymore. After she left, Arya leaned back in her chair, emotionally exhausted but satisfied in a way she'd never felt during law school or her brief time working with the FBI. This is what I wanted, she said quietly. When I decided to become a lawyer, this feeling that I actually helped someone, that I made a difference, even if it's just one person at a time. It's more than that, Damien said, pulling up their case log on his tablet. We've taken on 43 clients in the first month, filed 16 successful motions, helped 7 people avoid deportation, got criminal records expunged for 12 others, giving them a chance at employment. That's 43 lives we've changed, Arya. 43 people who the system had given up on. We're not even making a dent in the problem. No, he agreed, but we're making a dent in their lives. And that matters. She looked at him, this man who'd kidnapped her, threatened her, then shown her the truth about the world and herself. This beautiful, damaged, impossibly complicated man who'd somehow become her partner in every sense of the word. I love you, she said suddenly. I don't think I've actually said it out loud yet, but I do. I love you, Damien Constantin, former crime lord, current legal crusader, the man who saved my life by destroying everything I thought I knew. His pale blue eyes went soft, vulnerable, open in a way they never were for anyone else. I love you too, Arya Hartwell. Idealist, fighter, the woman who made me remember I had a soul worth saving. He pulled her close, kissed her temple. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, even if the circumstances were completely insane. Especially because the circumstances were insane, she corrected. I never would have seen the truth otherwise. Never would have found my way here. To you, to this work, to something that actually matters. A knock at the door interrupted them. Victor's scarred face appeared, surprisingly gentle for such a hard man. Sorry to interrupt the moment, he said with a slight smile, but we have situation. Good situation, but still situation. What kind of situation? Damien asked, already shifting into business mode. Reporter from the Times wants interview, about the work we do here, about former criminals finding redemption through helping others. She specifically wants to talk to you, boss. And to Arya, story could bring in major funding, major clients, major visibility. Damien and Arya exchanged glances, an entire conversation happening in that look. Tell her yes, Arya said. It's time. Time to stop hiding what we're doing. Time to show people that justice doesn't have to come from the system. It can come from anyone willing to fight for it. You sure? Damien asked. This will put you in the spotlight. Your father's corruption, your relationship with me, everything will be scrutinized. Let them scrutinize, she said firmly. We're doing good work, real work. And if my story, our story, can inspire others to do the same, to fight for justice in whatever way they can, then it's worth it. Victor nodded approvingly and ducked out to make the arrangements. Alone again, Damien pulled Arya into his arms, holding her close like she was something precious he was afraid to break. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For seeing past the monster everyone else sees. For believing I could be more than my father's son. For giving me a reason to actually try. He pulled back enough to look at her. For choosing to stay that first night when any sane person would have run. Maybe I'm not sane, Arya said with a slight smile. Or maybe I just recognize broken things worth putting back together. Takes one to know one, after all. Are we, though? He traced her cheekbone with his thumb. Put back together? No, she admitted. We're still broken in places. Still scarred. Still learning how to trust, how to love, how to live in this gray space between what we were and what we're becoming. But we're doing it together, and that makes all the difference. He kissed her then, soft and slow and full of promise. Outside the windows, Manhattan gleamed in the afternoon sun, millions of lives unfolding in its canyons of steel and glass. Some of those lives would find their way to this office, to this strange family of reformed criminals and idealistic lawyers, to people who understood that justice was something you had to fight for, not something you could simply trust the system to provide. They had work to do, cases to take, clients to help, a broken system to challenge one person at a time. But for now, in this moment, wrapped in each other's arms in the office they'd built from shadows and redemption, they were exactly where they needed to be. Ready to change the world? Damien asked. Arya smiled against his lips. With you? Always. And together they stepped forward into whatever came next. Partners, lovers, fighters for a justice the system had forgotten how to provide. It wouldn't be easy, it wouldn't be clean, but it would be real. And real, they'd learned, was worth more than perfect could ever be.